This big piece of rubble about the size of a car battery, and I moved it, and I saw a face underneath. They looked at me and blinked, and I had found them. Now, that's the way I could have started the story about the earthquake in Mexico City if it was true, but that part didn't happen. It is true that I was in Mexico City when the earthquake hit on September 19th. And this is a story about heroism, but it's not about my heroism. It's not a story about me being a hero. I was there because I lived there most of the year. I spent 3 months there, 1 month here, I go back and forth. And I was in Mexico City when the earthquake hit September 19th this year. September 19th, those of you who are old enough to remember, 1985 was the year of the biggest, most devastating earthquake in modern history in Mexico. And it happened to hit on September 19th. So ever since 1985, every year on the anniversary of the earthquake, which was devastating, thousands of people have died in that earthquake. Every year on the anniversary, there are simulacros, drills, to be prepared for the earthquake. This happens every year, and now the entire city has an elaborate network set up of earthquake alarms that go off. They can detect the tremors before people can even feel them. And so we had our drill this year. I was in a cafe when it hit. I was in Coyoacan, in the southern part of the city, in the old colonial part of the city, lots of short 1- and 2-story buildings. And I was in the cafe, actually, at a workshop of fellow writers and storytellers down there, which I do events like that when I'm there, as here. And we had our workshop in the cafe, and the simulacro happened, the alarm went off, the simulation, and we did the whole drill. I was used to it because I grew up in California, and we grew up doing these drills in California. I remember hearing every so often the principal getting on the loudspeakers and having us get under the desks. The principal would say, "We're having an earthquake." I think one time they even had sound effects when we had our drill when I was a kid. Like the principal made a sound with his face, his mouth. And I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. They've got sound effects. And so we had our drill on the 19th, on September 19th. And everyone went about it, and then we went back to our workshop. And then 2 hours later, there was an actual earthquake. All the rest of the members of the workshop had left. I was sitting inside the cafe, and I felt it. And I noticed there was a table of women next to me, and they weren't even getting up. I think they just assumed it was another drill. And I said, I think it's actually happening. I think there's an earthquake. And if you ever felt a really strong earthquake, it's a terrifying thing to feel. It's nothing like a simulator, nothing like a ride at an amusement park. Just, you feel the entire earth move really rapidly underneath your feet. And so all of us stood up once we realized what was happening. We all stood, we ran out into the street. All over the city, anywhere you go in Mexico City, there are these green markers on the cement with a white dot, and it says punto de encuentro, like meeting point, meetup point. So if there's an earthquake, everyone knows, run out of the buildings, go to the punto de encuentro and stand there and wait for it to pass. Stay away from the electrical lines and the buildings. And so after it hit, I really didn't know how bad it was at all. It hit, it was pretty scary. We saw the poles shaking, we saw the trees shaking, and then it passed, and we went back inside, and there was a little crack on the building inside, but that was about it. One of the paintings had fallen off the wall, and that was all. I pulled out my phone and I tried calling my girlfriend, and all the phone lines were down, so I couldn't get through, but I thought, oh, we'll be fine. I went outside and looked around again. All the buildings seemed to be fine. The power went out in Coyoacan where I was, but that was it. And I actually stayed in the cafe and just sat down and kept writing. And it wasn't until 2 hours later that I had left the coffee shop and was walking toward the subway station, and all of a sudden the phone lines came back again. And I started getting call after call from friends. And they're saying, "David, are you okay?" And I said, "Of course." We had had an earthquake before this, 11 days before the big one. We had one that was pretty small in Mexico City. The epicenter was further south. And I assumed this was the same thing. And so then my friends are calling and they're asking if I'm okay. And I said, "Why are you asking?" They said, "Well, in your neighborhood, in La Condesa, where you live near La Roma, in the very central part of the city," they said, "a bunch of buildings have fallen down. Dozens of buildings have collapsed in your neighborhood." And so by then I could get a hold of my girlfriend. I called her up. She was terrified. She didn't know if I was at home or if I was at the workshop. And I was slowly digesting how serious this was. It turns out it was very serious. There were at least 300 died in Mexico City as a result. Dozens of buildings collapsed, most of them very tall buildings, multiple stories. And as the day went on, I realized just how serious this was. So I talked to my girlfriend. We made plans to meet up, but nothing was moving. The subway was shut down. Transportation was shut down. I found a different Sanborn's coffee shop and just stayed put for a while. And by the time it was getting to be dusk, I said, wait, I have to move here. I have to get closer to home. So I went outside. I couldn't get a taxi cab anywhere. And I just walked eventually. I walked about 5 miles across the city, from the southern part of the city to the major artery of the city, Insurgentes Avenue. And I walked up Insurgentes. My girlfriend and I, Diana, and I met up at a coffee shop on Insurgentes. And still everything looked pretty normal. Everything looked, all the lights were on. Insurgentes looked like it always did. It's a big major avenue with lots of business on either side. So we met up and we took the bus further north into our neighborhood, into La Condesa. And once we got about 2 or 3 blocks more, everything went black. From then on, everything was entirely black. And to see a city that you're used to seeing full of lights, totally lit up, day and night, and to see it all totally black is a terrifying thing. You feel like it's the loss of everything stable, everything human, everything predictable in this world. It's like everything just shuts off. We got back to our block, we got off the bus and we're walking up to our apartment building, and we saw the area was cordoned off. There were a lot of people standing on the sidewalk, and there was police tape around. And we asked somebody what happened. And they said, oh, there's a building up there that's split in 2, and it's uninhabitable. So we walked up and we're praying and hoping. And we got up there, and it was not our building, but it was somebody's building. Somebody's building. It was dozens, hundreds of people's home building, split in 2. And there were dozens of others just like that in the city. So we went and we checked to make sure our apartment was fine. And once we did, then we got on the social media, got online, and we checked about where these buildings were that had collapsed. And we went, we found one, an address that was about 1 mile from our home, and so we walked to it. Again, the entire neighborhood, totally black. So we walked toward this address, and as we're getting out into this entirely dark city and streets, and I started to notice some lights moving around us. And the first thing that my paranoid side came out, and I thought, oh my God, is this looters, these criminals? Why are these lights coming to us? Who are these people? And we got closer to the lights. There were other people just like us who wanted to help out. We had bought a case of water. We were carrying it down the street. Everyone else is carrying cases of water and medical supplies. None of them were people from any NGO, from any organization. They were just people. Just ordinary people like you and me. We got to the side of the collapsed building, and then as soon as we got there, we saw a huge crowd of people, hundreds of people out there, and everyone's coming, bringing bottles of water, bringing packages of donations. Everyone heard what happened, and as soon as they knew their homes were fine, they left, dropped everything, and ran out to help, and went to the collapsed buildings. We got there was such a huge crowd of people standing outside. People were taking turns, moving in shifts. They had the bucket brigade. People lined up, single file, moving buckets of rubble back and forth. And as soon as we got there, the government aid workers, the government relief workers told us, you know what, there's a lot of people here. We've just received news that another building collapsed at such and such an address. So a bunch of us ran away from there and ran to the cars where people had parked them, and we found people who had some seats in their cars. We asked them if we could go with them. They said, sure. And at that moment, everyone just moved into action. Nobody stopped to think about whether it was a good idea or not. None of us went back to those messages from childhood about don't get into a car with strangers. We had to move. So we jumped in the car and we went. We went to the other building and we're carrying rubble and moving it back and forth. Again, hundreds of people. All different walks of life, all different social classes, backgrounds. People just dropped everything and went out in the middle of the night. And it was like that all night long. Right until dawn, we're moving with strangers, meeting people along the way, getting into their cars, we'd go help out for a while until we heard about a different building that had collapsed. And so a bunch of us would move to the cars and move to the next building and help out. And we did that all night long. But what we did, what I did, and my girlfriend in particular, was nothing special. What was special was the fact that thousands of people did it all at the same time. And I told you this is a story of heroism, but it's not about anything special I did. It turns out there wasn't very much I could do. In the following days after that, day and night, you would walk around Mexico City and see hundreds of people with hard hats that had been donated or bought, wearing vests, with work gloves, people walking up and down the streets. Most of the traffic was shut down, but people are walking, carrying shovels and pickaxes. Just ordinary people, students, workers, normal people walking out into the streets to help out complete strangers. There was a cook who worked at a restaurant, and they asked him, and he was working at the restaurant when the building in front collapsed. They asked him, why did you go run across the street and go climb into that rubble and start picking it up? And he said, it was very simple. He said, I just thought if I was stuck under there, I would want someone to come do that for me. It's common sense. Being in a place like that, you see the very best that humanity can be. The very best of humanity. The best that we can be of ourselves. Building restaurants opened up their doors. People took off their Wi-Fi passwords. Everyone gave everything. People were posting messages online, offering their homes to those who had lost them. Everyone dropped everything and offered everything they had. And nobody's thinking about personal gain or profit because it would be obscene at a time like that to think about something like that. There's a phrase in the Mexican national anthem that says, Piensa, oh patria querida, que el cielo un soldado en cada hijo te dio. Think, O homeland, that heaven herself has given you a soldier in each son of yours. And the phrase from that national anthem has never been more true than what we saw in the aftermath of the earthquake, September